So I'd like to welcome to the show Jay Frank, author of Future Hit DNA. Hi, Jay.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks. You?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Well, thanks for coming on. And first of all, how did your background, your previous experience in music inspire and inform the writing of Future Hit DNA?
Well, I think what happened was I was working at Yahoo Music and running the music programming team over there. And, it's the middle of the 2000s, and everybody was starting to get concerned about the effect that digital downloads was having on sales, and everybody was starting to be negative on the music business, on the recorded music business.
Yeah.
And I said, this is a time when we should start feeling positive, when we should really be looking at all the upside that all of this could do. And one of the things that I noticed, because of just looking at the data both at Yahoo as well as on other websites, I was beginning to notice that there were certain trends that were emerging on certain songs. And all of a sudden I started realizing that people were, it's 2007, 2008, and people were still writing songs as if it was 1998. Nobody had really changed the songwriting structure, the production techniques. Nobody really did anything about that. And I'm like, no wonder some of these songs aren't selling. It's just people aren't actually making songs to play into the technology. So I started developing some of the theories at that time of what were some of the elements that really made a hit song in the modern era. And then when I was going through and saying I needed to try to prove it, more and more I discovered that technology in some way, shape, or form had a role in just about any song that's been a hit in the entire recorded music era. I like to say that, at the end of the day, technology dictates consumption, not the other way around. And while we like to say that it's the creativity, and you have to have creativity in order to make something successful, at the end of the day, it's the technology that delivers that creativity that really does dictate what songs become popular and which songs don't.
Yeah, sure. So your premise is that technology has time and time again influenced and shaped the way in which songs are written. And in this respect, how did this happen, and how far does the influence go back to?
I think it actually goes back to the beginning of recorded music. To some degree, you can even say that it does go back to the beginning of music itself. When you didn't have the ability to record music, or even for that matter, write music or mass-produce music, you had to make music that was easily memorable. Otherwise, how were people, how was troubadours able to go from town to town and have people remember these songs? How are people going to be able to sing along to a song that nobody was going to be able to write down and read off of a song sheet? So, to some degree, the technologies always seem to have some influence on what songs became popular. But you really start to notice it when you actually did get to, the printing press and actually start to write down songs, create sheet music, and even, early recorded music. One of the things I talk about is, way back when, piano rolls, helped to dictate average lengths of songs, if for no other reason than because of the thickness to the piano roll. There was a maximum length you could have because a piano roll, the player piano couldn't fit a piano roll that was too thick. And so songs that were longer than 3 minutes rarely occurred because of that. So it always seems to be apparent that technology would have some sort of role in dictating which songs become popular. It's just never really been readily apparent to the people listening to the music.
The arrival of digital has completely changed the way we listen to music. In Future Hit DNA, you talk about how zero and non-zero plays define an experience where the listener listens to a song from the beginning or jumps in at the middle, for example, when shifting radio station. How is this influenced by streaming services like Pandora and by on-demand services like Rhapsody or Spotify? And does this change the way in which songs should be written and structured?
Absolutely. When people used to get music mostly from radio stations, there was a lot of times when somebody would actually become familiar with the song or engaged in the song because they stumbled upon the hook. You turned on the radio station in the middle of the song, you didn't like a song on one radio station, changed it to another radio station, and got in the middle of the song and something caught your ear, and you got engaged that way. But now, when you're talking about Pandora as an example, flipping through radio stations on Pandora, or even just flipping through songs if you want to hit the skip button to go ahead to the next song, every song starts at the beginning of the song. There is no experiences that you get on Pandora that puts you into the middle of the song so that you're hearing a song from the hook or about halfway through. Similarly, when you are on a on-demand service like Spotify, you are actually going from song to song to song to song, and all of those experiences are starting at the beginning of the song. And then you add in all of the other ways you can get songs. YouTube, any of the number of the sites that aggregate YouTube tracks into playlists, Google's new music search service, all of them have listening experiences where the song is starting at the very beginning of the song. So how does this change how a hit should be structured is that you basically need to utilize that beginning of the song. You need to play into the fact that everybody is experiencing the start of the song in the exact same way to your advantage. You also take into account the fact that everybody has way too many choices at their disposal. Too many music choices, too many other things, whether it's viral videos, video games, just talking to your friends, whatever it is. There's too many things that could cause you to be distracted from music. So how do you do what you need to do on the music? You have to engage the listener, and you have to engage the listener in 7 seconds. 10 seconds is about the point that people give a song before they say, I'm going to stick with this, or I'm going to move on to something else. And that's pretty universal from all of the sites that I've seen. So you as an artist have to engage somebody in 7 seconds, because if you don't, then they're reaching for that skip button to go to the next song on Pandora. They're reaching to go try out a different track on Spotify. And that's exactly what you don't want, because once they do that, the chances of them coming back to your song are a lot slimmer because they have so many choices out there. So what can you do to engage that listener? And that's where impressing them in 7 seconds is absolutely crucial. And if you look at, specifically in the U.S., I did an analysis of the top 10 selling downloads in January of this year, and sure enough, the top 7 all had introductions of 5 seconds or less. So all of the most successful songs from a sales perspective in the U.S. are all occurring with these songs that engage the listener immediately, that are keeping extremely short intros so that the listener comes right in and really embraces the song quickly.
Yeah, and in the book you make an interesting point in this respect about the way in which multiple versions of the same track or multiple versions of a video can actually help the artist achieve a better chart position and a better exposure. Whilst before, releasing many different versions was seen as a fragmentation, and it was kind of a bad move, as it could have hindered a song's chance to get in the charts. How has the digital environment changed the way in which multiple versions can actually help?
Well, I think one of the most important things now is trying to get multiple impressions of your song. It used to be with radio, you would basically spend a lot of time getting radio to give the listener a first impression, because you had to convince somebody to play the song. Once they said, I'm going to play it and put it on a playlist, then it was a lot easier for them to get multiple impressions, because they'd play it on the radio station multiple times. Then hopefully people liked it. Now, you and I could sit here and talk about music. I could tell you, hey, you should check out so-and-so. You'll play it once and get that first impression, but what's to say that you're going to go and get a second impression? Now, the first impression is the easiest. The second impression is the hardest. So the trick from an artist standpoint is, how can you get the listener to get those multiple impressions? Because the one thing that hasn't changed is you need 5 to 7 listens of a song in order for that song to be familiar. If you truly want to have fans of you as an artist, or you want to have people purchasing your song or buying ringtones or any sort of commerce interaction with the song, then what you need to do is you need to establish those multiple impressions. Now, one of the easy ways that I talk to do this is by having multiple versions, because you can hear one version and then not want to go back to that version again because you just thought it was okay. But if all of a sudden somebody made a more humorous video of it, then maybe you're more likely to hear that song again. Or if somebody was to go and actually make an acoustic version, or if you were to go and make a dance remix, depending on, there's different ways you can do it depending on what the song is.
Sure.
But more importantly is, having those multiple versions allows you to get those multiple impressions. And those multiple impressions will lead you to that familiarity that you need in order for yourself to have success. And then, as you touched upon, I think charts are moving into a direction more and more where they're rolling up all of the different versions of the songs. We're not quite there yet, but I believe that that's starting to happen, and it's certainly happening in the U.S. on the digital sales chart. And so if you have multiple versions, you might be able to get somebody to purchase the song more than once. You might be able to get somebody to listen to the song more than once. And all of that will lead to higher positioning on the charts, even if it's really just coming from the same person. So it's tricks to be able to get them to listen to the song over and over, both for familiarity, for chart reasons, and then ultimately that will lead you to bigger royalty checks.
And I was really interested in the parallel you draw between sports and music when you talk about season ticket holders for football and people that buy tickets for specific games during the season. Can you tell us a little bit about how it compares to the music buying crowd for you?
Well, sure. One of the things is that, to me, buying an album is akin to buying the, tickets to a sporting event, sporting team for a whole season. You're asked to put into that commitment, and there are people that are diehard fans, and you want to encourage and have that available. However, most people don't buy season tickets. Most people go to individual games. Most people can't commit to an entire season. Most people say, I can go to one game, maybe I can go to two games. Yeah. The music industry has done itself a disservice by focusing solely on these season ticket holders, where at the end of the day, you really do make a lot of money from those individual ticket holders. Same thing, I think, with singles. It's just that, we're starting to finally see some labels signing artists as single artists and knowing that if they market it correctly, and if they go and they spend the money correctly, it can be extremely profitable. It does not have to be something that you have to rely on an album. If something goes and sells 5 million downloads worldwide, which is entirely possible, that's $5 million. If you're able to keep your cost in check, there's no reason why that shouldn't be profitable. And more and more people need to recognize that and do that. And we're in an environment now where you need to focus on those for using the sporting terms, you need to focus on the single game visitors and not quite as much on the season ticket holders, because that's where you're going to be getting the bulk of your revenues from. And those single ticket holders, by the way, when they get engaged, all of a sudden can get engaged, in a sporting event. They could be buying more beer, they could be buying more souvenirs, and there's no reason why the music fan couldn't be doing the same thing.
Sure. And in that respect, if an artist has to start concentrating quite a bit more on the singles rather than on the albums, this also helps, because the fans are not prepared really to wait 3 to 4 years for a new album to come around, because the artist needs to keep himself current. So do you think EPs and singles are going to be the way in which artists can keep the audience engaged, whilst the albums are sort of an old format?
Absolutely. One of the crucial points I talk about in the book is that you have to release more songs more often if you want people to be engaged in you as an artist. It's very easy in this day and age to be completely distracted, and if you're not releasing stuff often enough, then somebody's going to forget about you as an artist. They're not going to be quite as concerned. They're not going to have as much familiarity with your music, and they're not going to want to spend time going to shows or buying t-shirts. Whereas if you're constantly engaging them and you're constantly delivering them music, then they get excited. The other thing is that there's been numerous instances where an artist will take several years to release music, and then when it comes out, it's a disappointment. And they really lose fans because the fan has waited 2 years for something to come out, and then when they hear it, when it's not good, then they basically said the artist has failed me, and they leave because they've built up that expectation. If you're releasing music every 2, 3, or 4 months, if something comes out that the artist wants to experiment with, and the music comes out and it's not that good, the audience will be a lot more forgiving, because they'll say, well, this one wasn't that good, but I know they're going to have another single a couple of months from now, so I'll wait to see what they come up with next. Yeah. And that's a key differentiation point, because you just set a different parameter of expectations on the consumer. And that's a lot of where the music business problems are stemming from right now, is much more about the expectations that you deliver to the consumer. If you go and you say, I know that there's always going to be new music around the corner, they will forgive the dud singles because the next one might be brilliant. Now, if you have 6 dud singles in a row, well, that's a whole different problem.
a number of digital business models and outlets that are not a la carte like iTunes, for example, but rely on subscription and advertising dollars to actually be able to monetize their venture, are still trying to figure out how to really make a profit, how to monetize the content they offer. Do you think that this income streams that will come from these outlets to the artist will ever become substantial, or do you think it will always be a marginal type of income?
I think that subscription outlets are going to become more substantial than they are today. I don't necessarily think that they're going to become the primary source of income, but I think what will end up happening is whereas before you got 99% of your recorded music dollars from a distributor, now you're going to be getting your dollars from a multitude of places. So you might, hypothetically, you might get 20% of your revenue coming from streaming services, 20% from downloads to own, 20% from mobile sales, 20% from various online licensing, 20% maybe from people embedding your song into other YouTube videos or something. And you're just going to have to deal with the fact that, and not to mention, you still very well may get 20-30% of your revenues coming from physical sales.
Sure.
And I know that adds up to more than 100%, but you get the idea of what I'm talking about, is that the artist has to get used to the fact that it is rarely going to be one or two revenue streams that are going to be making up the dollars that you make. It's going to be collecting pennies from probably hundreds, if not thousands, of different locations. If anything, I see probably the biggest type of business that could open up in the next 10 years is going to be one of royalty collections. Because if somebody's able to go and say, all right, well, you know what, I only made $20 in streaming revenue from Spotify. Well, that may be fine, but then you may have also made $20 from 100 different sites, and all of a sudden you're making $2,000, which is no small change.
Yeah.
And that's what I think, a lot of people need to be realizing. And but more importantly is that you have to make your music work within those systems. From an artist perspective, the subscription model and the streaming on demand model basically requires that you have to have a good enough song to stream multiple times. Part of the flawed record business model was if you had a single that you bought for 99 cents and you listened to it twice and you said, this song actually isn't that good. And then all of a sudden as a consumer, you paid 50 cents per listen. Not a good proposition. Yeah. But then you can take a classic song, and it doesn't matter what it is. It could be Smells Like Teen Spirit, Stairway to Heaven, doesn't really matter. Take a classic song that the person is going to be listening to hundreds and hundreds of times over the length of time that they own that song. And all of a sudden, the artist is getting paid less, tenth of a cent per listen, less than streaming service. That's a bad proposition for the artist. So to me, the streaming services work out well because if you actually have one of those classic songs, you should, over the life of that user and that song, get paid more than if they were to buy that either digitally or physically. Yeah. And that just basically means that, guess what? It's all about the quality of the song, and you have to deliver great quality. And maybe we don't have a music business that is fleecing consumers over mediocre work, and maybe it comes down to the fact that you have to do good work. I don't think that that's a bad thing.
Yeah, and especially in the States, the advent of online radio has created a new revenue stream for artists because you don't actually get royalties from traditional radio plays, but you do from online radio plays. So the fact that, for example, background music or more mellow types of music can achieve a considerable amount of plays on online stations, that can actually generate an income.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, traditionally, the more mellow or background music, has typically played well on radio, but has not generated dollars. And now in the States, one of the secret weapons of nearly all of the online streaming services has been that, for all the attention that your indie rock gets and your pop music formats get, in actuality, there's a huge percentage of people who listen to online radio in the office, and they're listening to mellow background music. Yeah. And to your point, that's music that is now monetized. And even in the countries where traditional radio does pay performance royalties, in many of them, the performance royalties for online are higher. So all of a sudden, these opportunities, whether they sell or not, there's huge opportunities for these songs to be making more and more money. And all of those services are only growing in popularity and growing in their ability to generate revenue. It's not quite there in terms of, hey, I can make a living by doing nothing but mellow music on these services, but we're getting close. And again, it's the same thing. It's never going to be necessarily, here's Spotify sending me a check for $50,000 every quarter. It's going to be, here's 100 sites sending me a check for $50 to $100 per quarter, and it all adds up to some substantial royalties.
Yeah. And in Future Hit DNA, you talk about how using recognizable samples or releasing cover versions of popular tracks can help an artist gain airplay. But what are the possible pitfalls in adopting that type of strategy?
Well, the pitfall of utilizing cover versions is, of course, the fact that it could become so popular and you miss out on royalties just because you don't own the publishing portion and the writer's portion of the song.
Yeah.
The positive parts, though, is that it could draw an extra amount of attention to who you are as an artist. Also, it becomes something that if all of a sudden you're able to establish your own original song, and it becomes much more popular for people to utilize cover versions in order to gain attention, then it becomes an additional revenue stream just because people are covering your song once you have the right song. So it's kind of like that quid pro quo. You may have to take a step back in the beginning of your career by focusing on that cover song, but later on in your career that could actually be two steps forward if you write the hit. But based on, to me, there's much more positives than negatives on the cover side. Samples might be a different story, but on the cover side, it's much more positive because you get people searching for song titles. People nowadays start their awareness based on the song, not on the artist.
Yeah.
And so there's a huge opportunity for people to stumble upon. So, for example, the biggest example I think last year was Kings of Leon, Use Somebody. And there's a lot of people who didn't know who sang that song. And so when they searched for it, they certainly saw lots of Kings of Leon, but they saw many other artists who did cover versions. Yeah. And you might stumble and accidentally play one of those other versions and go, this isn't the right version, but this artist is kind of cool. And then all of a sudden, that artist is now attracting people to them, and then boom, before you know it, you actually have a new fan. Yeah. And that's one of the beauties of search and one of the abilities that you can be able to utilize people searching for one thing and stumbling upon your music to be able to slowly but surely grow your fan base.
Yeah. And what do you think of recommendation technology? I mean, a lot of services are developing, but there isn't a great deal out there to actually give meaningful recommendations to people, aside from the usual sites like Amazon, for example. Why is this sector not developing as fast as the rest of the industry?
Well, I think, we as music fans and as music creators, we look at music differently than the general public. We are very active in wanting to find music. We're wanting to discover music. So when we go and see recommendations, there may be something to seeing something and saying, oh, okay, I'm going to go and check this out. But the average consumer wants music. They want to be entertained, which means that they want music pushed to them. Yeah. So the idea of actually pulling to music based off of recommendations, because recommendations aren't a push because you still have to make an active choice to say, I choose this over something else. Yeah. So one of the things, though, that I do talk about is that the recommendations can act as kind of like an advertisement, and if people see a particular artist recommended enough, then somebody is going to actually click through. Not a music example, but just recently, I had somebody who became my friend on Facebook, who I don't know, but he basically emailed me and said, "Hey, I've had enough times where Facebook has recommended you to be my friend that I finally realized I just had to make you my friend, just because I showed up so often in his recommendations." And I think the same thing can happen with music. If you follow through on this, if you follow through on saying, okay, I'm not going to, as an example, release an album every 2 years, but I'm going to release an EP every 4 months. All of a sudden, you put that, now let's say that you are an artist that would appeal to a fan. Rather than your recommendation coming up once or twice every 2 years, now you have recommendations that may be coming up every month. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, again, you see that recommendation over and over, and at any one time it may not have an effect, but cumulatively, all of a sudden they may see your artist name over and over, going, they keep recommending to me the Joe Blows. I've got to check this out. There must be something to this.
Yeah.
So again, it's like there's a positive aspect of recommendation engines, and you couple that with the again, the ability to release music more and more, and then you're just adding one more element to make your artist more successful.
Sure. And the book, Future Hit DNA, could be deemed controversial by some. Some people think that music should come from the heart of an artist, and there should be very few commercial considerations attached to the creative process. So what's your reply to that possible criticism to the book?
My reply is that I actually agree with them to some degree. I don't think that my book is for every single musician. As an example, I love Radiohead. They're certainly one of my favorite artists out there right now. Yeah. And I would hate for them to be influenced by this book, because I don't think that it would serve their art well, nor do I think that they would respond to it even if they were, because they succeed because they go and blaze their own creative trail. However, their level of quality has to be so good, and as an artist, your level of quality has to be so good in order for you to work past a lot of the elements that I talk about in my book. But that being said, there's a lot of artists who do have a main goal, that they want to be able to make a career out of this. They want to be able to make a living out of it, and may want to make small sacrifices. I say up front, you can't take my book and write a song with all the elements in my book and expect it to be a hit. It won't happen. Yeah. You have to have that creative element to start with. But what I do say is that if you have that creativity, and then you can basically write 90% of your song and then take the extra 10% and tweak it just a little bit based on some of the ideas that I have in my book, then you probably will increase the chances that your song will be successful by 100%. Yeah. But overall, I expected my book to be controversial. I wouldn't think I was onto something real if I didn't have somebody hate it. And
sure.
And again, I love artists who go for music based off of nothing but the art, and I encourage them to do so. And and my book is much more for the people who are focused on making music, their commercial, professional careers.
And finally, how can the listeners of Digital Music Trends get hold of the book?
Sure, I'm selling it on my website, futurehitdna.com. And you can buy it there as a PDF, or you can buy a physical copy. I also have a package deal because I sell my book through the Topspin platform, which is absolutely incredible. And through them, I'm also offering a package deal where you can buy a copy of the book and also buy a consulting session for your music if you'd like. If that doesn't appeal to you, my book is available on Amazon worldwide. It's also available on the Amazon Kindle in the U.S. And as I found, it's made its way onto most reputable book selling sites around the world. I've seen it available in Japan, India. I know it's on a couple of other sites in the UK and in France. So online's pretty easy to find. But if you can't, futurehitdna.com, and I'll send it anywhere around the world you'd like me to, or you can just buy the PDF and get it right there. You can also, by the way, go to futurehitdna.com. And I am giving away a free chapter of the book. So if all of this has not convinced you, you can go download a chapter and take a read and see if it's something that interests you.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, thank you very much for coming onto the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me here.
And have a great day.